Well, Insys Therapeutics has made its way across my desk again. This time they finally got their long awaited approval. Not very long, really. I think they put in for this in July of 2016. But anyway, they got their approval for their synthetic marijuana. Um, Now, if you remember Insys Therapeutics, and the last time I talked about them, it was because they got caught up in some kind of a situation where they were basically just pushing this fentanyl mouth spray off on just about anybody that wanted it, or anybody, maybe even some unsuspecting people that didn't even know what they were getting into. They had doctors out there faking people's diagnoses to to say that they had cancer. They had patients lying to their insurance companies about what their diagnosis was, or about whatever, to cover the, cost of this mouth spray, which is definitely not cheap. Anything that has to do with fentanyl is expensive, whether you get it through, traditional pharmacies, or whether you go buy it on the street. So let's go with the Washington Post story. That's where we start. Insys Therapeutics, a pharmaceutical company that was one of the chief financial backers of the opposition to legalized marijuana in Arizona last year, received preliminary approval from the Drug Enforcement Agency this week for Syndros, a synthetic marijuana drug. Also reported on the fact that Insys gave $500,000 last summer to Arizonans for a responsible drug policy, the group opposing marijuana legalization in Arizona. And if you live in Arizona, you remember the overwhelming amount of ridiculous, over the top reefer madness commercials. And they just, I don't think they made but maybe five of them, maybe, and then they just ran them 24/7. You couldn't get away from them. So the donation amounted to roughly 10% of all the money raised by the group in an ultimately successful campaign against legalization. Insys was the only pharmaceutical company known to be given money to oppose legalization last year, according to the Washington Post's analysis of campaign finance records. Now, that's a big deal because 8 states had marijuana. Oh, I'm sorry. Was it 6 states that had marijuana on the ballot? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I think it was 9 states altogether had some form of marijuana on the ballot. Um, and when it comes to recreational, there was four or five. It was you had Nevada, Arizona, Maine, Massachusetts, and California, of course. And there's one more I can't think of. Was it Alaska? Maybe. I thought they did that before. But anyway, this is getting hard to keep track of, in case you guys haven't figured that out yet. Everything is happening at light speed compared to, before I made this channel, even. The weed news was basically once every 2 or 3 months if you were lucky. I did notice in the earlier part of 2016 that it was kind of ramping up, and we started seeing the ballot initiatives, locking in their whether they were going to be on the ballot or not, and then subsequent stories following that. And then after 2017 kicked in, a whole avalanche of states are now considering legalizing marijuana, anywhere from adult use to medical, and even decriminalizing. But when it comes to putting money against the effort to legalize marijuana in any of those campaigns, Insys was the only pharmaceutical company known to be giving money to the effort. Incidentally, they're also the only company known to be manufacturing synthetic marijuana. Kind of weird how that works, isn't it? And this synthetic marijuana it's basically whatever you think of synthetic marijuana being, and it's usually not good. This stuff here is basically just a replacement for something that gives you the munchies, from what I hear, from what I understand. So Syndros is a synthetic formulation of THC, the main psychoactive component in the cannabis plant. It was approved by the FDA last summer to treat nausea, vomiting, and weight loss in cancer and AIDS patients. The DEA approval places Syndros and its generic formulations in Schedule 2 of the Controlled Substances Act, indicating a, quote, high potential for abuse, unquote. Other Schedule 2 drugs include cocaine, morphine, and many prescription painkillers such as Vicodins, hydrocodone, blah, blah, blah. Whole plant marijuana remains Schedule 1 in Schedule 1 of the Controlled Substances Act, an even stricter regulatory category that designates lack of medically accepted use in addition to high abuse potential. Now, we all know what's going on here. We all know exactly what's going on here. We have Syndros, who's lining the pockets of the DEA. We have Syndros, who wants approval for their product, which is an artificial THC. It's synthetic THC. It's basically Marinol or Drabanol. Only now you have this Syndros, which is I'm not sure if it's a mouth spray or some kind of something like that. Not sure, but basically it's just THC. That's it. And they fought to keep marijuana illegal in Arizona. Arizona is also where Insys Pharmaceuticals is located. That's where their home base is. So they fought to keep your typical garden variety, pick it off the plant, dry it out, and smoke it marijuana. They fought to keep that illegal in Arizona. Of course, when it comes to Schedule 1, I'm sure the DEA's decision to come out with a public statement saying that they're not going to take it off schedule or whatever, I'm sure that, this is all related. This is all relatively, it's not hard to connect the dots, all right? The DEA is bending over backwards for these guys. The FDA approved them right off the bat, and this is synthetic THC, so it's not that big of a freak out. It's not like, oh my goodness, why would you do this? Because, Marinol's already been out there since the 80s. This is some synthetic THC that comes in a pill form and, whatever. So Insys has been active in marijuana policy for several years, it turns out. In 2011, it wrote to the DEA to express opposition to loosening restrictions on naturally derived THC. Again, citing, quote, the abuse potential in terms of the need to grow and cultivate substantial crops of marijuana in the United States. So they're just saying that instead of getting THC from plants, it'd be a lot easier to control THC if you just clamp down on and quit loosening up the restrictions on plant-derived THC, because there's a lot of potential for people to be growing extra marijuana, I guess. The abuse potential in terms of the need to grow and cultivate. So you got to grow and cultivate substantial crops of marijuana to get the THC that these guys want. Hey man, leave our weed alone, dude. You are a sick fucker. You got to go, man. You got to go. Your drugs that you make already are killing people. Every day people are dying from your shit, your fentanyl. Okay, last year it petitioned the DEA to loosen restrictions on synthetic versions of CBD, another compound in the cannabis plant. The company is currently developing a CBD-based drug to treat pediatric epilepsy. No thanks. All right, dude? Since you guys are fighting medical marijuana and recreational marijuana at every turn, you just stay out of the game, man. And, another reason that they're trying to get into the marijuana game is because they're not doing so well in the opioid game. Matter of fact, people are dying left and right from their products. They're looking at lawsuits coming in left and right. And, now they got people that are under federal investigation, indicted and arrested for all that stuff I was talking about earlier. Their business model is to operate like straight up drug dealers in an illegal fashion and do it until you get caught, and then just pay for the lawyers, let the fall guys take their hits, and keep on going on with this business as usual. That's what Insys Therapeutics is all about. That's how they run their business. That's how they do it. Meanwhile, thousands of people a year are dying from their products. As you can see over here, I have a chart on the in the background there that shows the fentanyl related deaths. I don't know if those deaths there are actual, one-to-one numbers or what, but all I see is a spike. I see a giant spike after 2010, and I also see it has passed heroin since 2003 and has been killing more people than heroin since 2003. Well, they say it's fentanyl-related deaths. A lot of the heroin deaths, believe it or not, are fentanyl-related too, because somehow some sick and twisted drug dealers out there thought it would be a good idea to go ahead and smash some fentanyl up into the heroin. And that is lethal as it can get, because as we know, as you might know, or you maybe not, fentanyl can be up to 50 to 100 times stronger than morphine, which is somewhere in the 25 to 50 times stronger than heroin range. It's terrible, man. So you had the Arizona's marijuana legalization campaign last year, and a spokesman from that said it appears that they are trying to kill a non-pharmaceutical market for the marijuana in order to line their own pockets with the synthetic market. And as we've seen with Marinol, I don't know if anybody out there is familiar with Marinol. I'm not really. I don't know much about it. I've read a lot about it. Never taken it, never seen it in person, to be honest. From what I understand, it's garbage. All right, it isn't the same thing as natural THC, and these guys know that. They know it. That's why they got to fight it like this. That's why they got to fight it with dark money and campaign against it, and dark money over here to the DEA, to the FDA, to try to get them to side with them on, synthetic THC is good, but this natural THC, too much propensity for abuse, whatever. So last year, the company said that it opposed the marijuana legalization measures because it fails to protect the safety of Arizona citizens, and particularly its children. But it added that it firmly believes in the potential clinical benefits of cannabinoids, and that, quote, we hope that patients will have the opportunity to benefit from these potential products once clinical trials demonstrate their safe and effective use. We already know that regular old natural cannabis is safe and effective, so we don't care about your shitty clinical trials with your fake shit. At least I don't. If anybody else out there does, please tell me why in the comments section, because these guys are criminals. The people that run Insys Therapeutics are straight up criminals. And this shit that he's talking about, when they oppose marijuana legalization, because it failed to protect the safety of Arizona's citizens, particularly its children. There's so much shit that's wrong with that, I don't even know where to begin. But first of all, legalization does aim to protect the children. And if you looked at it, they had, everything from medibles being unattractive labeling and childproof to limits on where you could have dispensaries. They had, obviously you couldn't go to a dispensary unless you were 21 and up. I mean, basically, that is protecting the children. Furthermore, you aren't doing anything to protect the children. If you look at that subsys there in the back behind, I guess it would be maybe over there. Anyway, if you look at the subsys in the background there's no child protection on that. It technically doesn't really look that unattractive either. It's got nice bright green colors, and it looks like some kind of these days they got candy dispensers that look like that. Well, anyway, even if a kid, whether they thought it was candy or not, when they pick up this subsys thing, if you accidentally left that laying around the house, that's like leaving a loaded and ready gun on the table, all right? So you're not trying to protect kids at all. In fact, if you look at the statistics of the people that are dying from these opioid overdoses, I'm pretty sure the age group's going to be somewhere between 17 and 24. That's going to be your highest demographic for age on these opioid overdoses. I'm pretty sure. 17. And if you look at the overdoses between the ages of 15 and 17, they're almost as high as 17 to 24. That's a 2-year age group versus a 5 or a 7-year. That's a lot of people that die at a young age. That's the children that you aren't protecting. And come to find out, a lot of these people that are dying from these opioids, they're getting prescribed them at young ages. And we found out 2 years ago that the FDA approved Oxycontin for 11-year-old, kids. When does it end, man? These guys get to do whatever they want. Because I don't know if maybe that's the corruption or something. They get to do whatever they want. Meanwhile, they can sit there and say something about marijuana like, "Oh, we can't use natural THC because there's too many plants you'd have to grow to get it. We can just make this shit in the lab all day long." It's garbage. Don't believe anything they say. They're crooks. All right, they go on. Insys is also the subject of numerous state and federal criminal investigations, as well as a shareholder lawsuit over its aggressive marketing of a product containing the potent and deadly opioid painkiller fentanyl. Now, how do you get a federal agency that's the drug enforcement agency, how do you get them to sign off on you making synthetic compounds and drugs in your little lab, while meanwhile you're under investigation, and not only just under investigation, but several of your employees are behind bars or have pending trials, and the FBI is actually seeking victims of your crime, which is basically dumping these deadly, killing people every day, opioids out there, fentanyl, mouth spray. You're killing people. You're literally killing people. These guys are killing people. And the DEA is like, yeah, we'll give you an approval on your little research project for synthetic THC, which we say THC is dangerous, but go ahead and make some synthetic THC. Man, get the fuck out of here, dude. This is the most fucked up story I've ran into in a long time, all right? This is how bad our government is corrupt. They won't listen to us at all. We got 28 plus states plus DC with medical marijuana on the books, and people using medical marijuana at a 90+% success rate saying, yes, it works. And you guys, meanwhile, don't give a shit about us. These guys over here are killing people every day, and you're like, yeah, all right, we'll work with you. We love you. Holy shit. Maybe the marijuana lobbyists should start focusing on just putting together dark money envelopes and briefcases and slipping them under tables and shit. Is that what we got to do to get some approval around here? We don't want no approval. We want this marijuana taken right out of your hands altogether. You guys are all corrupt crooks. You can bathe in your corrupt money and let your pharmaceutical goons kill more people with their garbage. But please, get us out of it. Take us off the Controlled Substances Act. We're done. We don't need you guys. So, in December, the FBI arrested the company's former chief executive and 5 other executives on charges that they paid kickbacks and committed fraud to sell a highly potent and addictive opioid that can lead to abuse and life-threatening respiratory depression. That's their new code word for opioid overdose death. Because they don't want to say that, because that's it's inflammatory, Whoa, don't put that in the same paragraph as our name. Insys made sure of that. Washington Post. But that's what it is. It's the deaths that you keep hearing all these politicians from mayors from little towns all over the Midwest, all the way to people out west in the middle of nowhere talking about, man, this opioid thing is an epidemic. It's a serious problem. It's wiping towns right off the map. But yet, you're going to change the wording on that because incest don't want to tarnish their reputation. So call it life-threatening respiratory depression. But we know what it is. That is when you die from opioids. That's how you die. You can't breathe. It's called respiratory depression. It's terrible. In addition to its synthetic marijuana products, Insys is also developing a drug to treat opioid overdose, of course. Because, if you're not making enough money killing people, you got to keep some of them alive, I guess. So sell the poison and sell the antidote. These guys are sick and twisted fuckers. And the DEA, FDA, they're all friends. Of course, the company did not have any immediately respond for a requested comment. They're not going to respond. They don't care. They operate in as much darkness as they can. Alicia Wallace from the Cannabis has a couple extra things to add to this. Remember, it's got liquid dronabinol. That's just a fancy way of saying when you take your Marinol and churn it into something else that's liquid so it can be administered in a different way. So it's looking forward to bringing this new drug product to chemotherapy patients to help alleviate their nausea and vomiting, and AIDS patients with anorexia-associated weight loss, respectively. Proven fact, and this is proven, guaranteed it's proven. Over and over and over again, every day this is proven, that if you have someone suffering from wasting syndrome, no matter what is causing it, no matter what ailment or what drugs they have to take that's making it so they can't eat, morning sickness from being pregnant, no matter what, proven fact is all you got to do is use some cannabis. Mainly, I believe THC is the big one. Use some THC, you're going to get an appetite. But with marijuana, like any other thing that it treats and it is good for, you need to use it with the rest of the compounds that's in the marijuana. So I would argue that this thing that they're doing with just THC only is probably not going to be the best. But if you just smoked a joint or take a couple puffs off of a joint, or however you need to consume your marijuana, it seems to be a thing. And maybe they've tested this a few times and they realize that it does work pretty good, but not as good, but good enough to, sell a few. And they're going to, patients aren't going to be the most disappointed people in the world. But if they could do a side-by-side comparison, they'd be like, oh, no, there's no comparison. And I'm just speculating. But that's just the way it's been with everything else so far when it comes to marijuana. And when you take and isolate one thing from marijuana like THC and try to act like you got something. Generally speaking, you don't. And if someone has experience with Marinol, please enlighten me. Insys interim CEO Dr. Santak Vedakadan said in a statement, all right, and we look forward to interacting with the FDA to finalize the labeling and subsequent launch of Syndros in the second half of 2017. Oh my God. I mean, even if they somehow Arizona did still legalize marijuana after these guys and everybody else threw all that money at that reefer madness, you still wouldn't be able to buy legalized, just a bud to roll up into a joint. You wouldn't be able to buy that in Arizona by the later half of 2017. I mean, just look at the other states that legalized. Look at the right-wing ones, like Maine and Massachusetts, which I didn't think of as being right-wing until this stuff started happening. But now I'm looking at them, and they're trying to do everything they can to delay this shit. Meanwhile, if you're Insys Therapeutics, you might have people doing your artificial marijuana before 2017 is even over. This is unbelievable. So Health and Human Service officials said that the liquid dronabinol has a higher potential for abuse than Marinol because the liquid formulation could be manipulated to produce extracts for vaping or edibles according to the notice in the Federal Register. Give me a break. This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of. Whatever. I mean, I think that anything that they do in the lab should be Schedule 3 or 4, with this marijuana products. Now, when you talk about Subsys, their fentanyl mouth spray, that should be Schedule 1, illegal. They shouldn't be allowed to manufacture that. You can't tell me that someone suffering from cancer, no matter how much pain someone's in, there's got to be something better than that shit. Veticaden last year told the cannabis that chemically synthesized drugs are highly reliable and thus could meet the rigorous testing demands and standards from the FDA. A synthetic approach could mitigate any potency issues that patients could encounter when buying products from dispensaries. Again, marijuana has 2 levels of potency, regular and concentrated. All right? Regular has weaker versions, and so does concentrated. But for the most part, they are in line with a pretty reliable amount of compounds. So I don't know what they keep talking about. Like if you got different kinds of bud, like if you got White Widow and over here, and then you got some Granddaddy Perps over there, it's gonna give you some kind of different results. Like the patient's gonna, be unsatisfied, or it's not gonna work for them. Man, you don't know what you're talking about. You keep acting like marijuana isn't medicine because it's not something you can measure in the exact this and that. You can do that, by the way. But because of the concerto effect of all the different compounds and stuff that's in marijuana working together at once, then that's enhanced effects. And then that's could be, each person's different. Maybe you'll find the one that works for you the best or whatever, but nothing's going to be like, oh, that didn't work. Or, oh, that's way too strong. But whatever, if you grease the skids over at the federal government, you can pretty much do whatever you want. While people are dropping dead from your medication, you can still sell it and still do research to make other medication. Insys is in regulatory filings to the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission has expressed concern about natural cannabis and the legalization of marijuana. And they say, moreover, our cannabinoid products may compete with non-synthetic cannabinoid drugs, including therapies such as GW Pharmaceuticals, Sativex, and Epidiolex, especially in many countries outside the United States where non-synthetic cannabinoids are legal. In addition, literature has been published arguing the benefits of natural cannabinoids or marijuana over dronabinol, and there are a number of states that have already enacted laws legalizing medical and recreational marijuana. There is some support in the United States for further legalization of marijuana. We also cannot assess the extent to which patients utilize marijuana legally to alleviate chemotherapy-induced nausea and vomiting instead of using prescribed therapies such as approved dronabinol products. So that's their biggest hurdle right there, is to take over that market with their dronabinol products. The market of people with nausea because of chemotherapy, and as they mentioned before, anorexia and other reasons to have wasting syndrome. Sorry, guys, you're never going to have 100% of that market share, all right? You dipshits. There's just no way. What are you going to do? Go to a full-on banning of marijuana? Is that where you're heading with this? Let's see, what do they call that? Prohibition of marijuana? Wonder where they've tried that before. Wonder how successful they were at that. Shut the fuck up, man. Why don't you guys just quit now? All right? Just give it up. Just quit your synthetic marijuana experiment. It's not going to work very well for you. I'm sure you're going to force feed a bunch of hospitals and shit this shit so that you get your quotas up. But in the end, you're garbage. Your whole, everything you make is garbage. Your fucking business plan is criminal. The people that work for you are all criminals and death dealers. The people that own this shit are scumbag pieces of shit. And anybody that works with them are basically colluding and conspiring in this felonious drug dealing bullshit. I say just stay out of the marijuana game, man. You guys are doing just fine with the fucking opioids as far as fucking shit up. And here's your federal registrar action by the DEA that was put into action on the 23rd of March 2017. And it's the approval for Syndros to be a Schedule 2. So there you have that. And it's barely mentioned in the stories that I seen, which was a nice handful of them on the internet today when I woke up. I didn't really catch the story yesterday when it happened, but 2 days ago they launched this 30-day comment page on the DEA's regulations.gov area. And I'm going to put a link in the description below for this in case anybody wants to go make a comment. I might. Now, I like to keep my profile kind of low when, I don't like to whack the hornet's nest too fucking much. But I might go make a comment because this is really crazy what's going on. I mean, you got to be kidding me, man. These guys just get approval to make synthetic cannabinoids like nothing. Now, remember, I don't know how much synthetic cannabinoids are the underground synthetic cannabinoids that you buy on the black market. I don't know if those are actually like synthetic THC mixed with this and that. I'm not sure what those even are. Maybe I should look into that, but last time I checked, those were dangerous. I don't know about this synthetic THC. I've never heard too much about Marinol. It's garbage, as far as I know. So fentanyl billionaires come under fire as death toll mounts from prescription opioids. This was a Wall Street Journal article from at the end of last summer, maybe in the early fall. I remember I did a clip for it, if you go back in my clips. And then here's a 5-year stock report for Insys Therapeutics. As you can see, in the middle of 2015, when they first started getting approvals for this cannabinoid thing that they were working on, their stocks went up. And then what happened after that? Well, that's when they started doing dumb shit and started getting caught doing it again. But I mean, if you go all the way back 5 years ago, they were getting caught doing dumb shit. And it's just a pattern with these guys. That's what they do. They do it until they get caught, and then they do it again. And then when they get so bad that their shareholders are like begging for release, please don't do this anymore. Then they're like, okay, you know what? We got this new drug that we're working on. It's going to come out, and their stocks start going back up. Will that happen this time with the cannabinoid thing? I don't know, man. It's hard to say. This is written back in January, so these guys don't seem to think so. And these guys are just basically some people that will help you with some advice on stocks, what to follow and what not to or whatever. And they're thinking, no, these guys are a waste of money. Don't even bother with it. So you have, their summary was, we've stated that the Insys has been uninvestable for a better part of a year now. You got former executives already arrested on charges of a nationwide conspiracy, and the FBI is seeking victims. This may lead to charges getting far more serious. Substance prescriptions are crashing in the meantime, as in people are finding out about this shit, and they're like, what? How did I get a prescription for this shit? I'm not doing this no more. Or even, well, I knew I was getting this, but I didn't know it was that dangerous. And then Insys brand, a company, are tarnished for good. I hope so. I really hope that's true. The FDA and the DEA are doing them a huge favor by letting them go ahead with their marijuana thing. It's basically like throwing them a life raft, little life preserver on a sinking ship. And here's your FBI victim outreach. This is from the Victim Assistant Program from the Federal Bureau of Investigations. The FBI is seeking victims who may have been prescribed the fentanyl-based pain medication Subsys. Now, have you ever heard anybody going out on a lookout for anything marijuana-related like this? Like, oh my God, there was a bad batch of marijuana that got out, and we're looking for anybody that might have came into contact with this. No, never. So Subsys, a powerful narcotic intended to treat cancer patients suffering intense episodes of breakthrough pain between March 2012 and December 2016. All right, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but yeah, that's crazy right there. You know, and the FBI is actively looking for people with a questionnaire to talk about, you know, what's going on. How did you get prescribed this shit? Do you have cancer? You know, basically that's what it's going to be. And that's it. All right. Insys, you're garbage. John Kapoor, you're the scum of the earth. You are just God. There's just no words to describe this.